we had John Kerry come to Shanghai in March, and also President Xi attended President Biden's Earth Day Summit on climate change. So that is actually a good sign that we have many things to work on. I mean, just now Susan mentioned the issues like North Korea, Iran, Myanmar, and now even Afghanistan now become a vacuum. So many issues we could. Pandemic is probably the most urgent one as well. But they actually just at our conference, the 7th annual CCG annual conference, we had a former Vice Minister Chen Jian of Commerce actually said, at the conference that maybe we could work to get U.S. on those infrastructure project. I noticed that Biden has already reached a consensus with probably both bipartisan on investing U.S. through infrastructure, because I think U.S. and not only U.S. but also the rest of the world all need infrastructure. The infrastructure could be the next biggest impetus and the drive for the global economy and globalization as well. So in that area, can we work together, like Vice Minister Chen said, maybe the B3W or Blue Dot and of the U.S. proposed G7 proposal, China can work with that with BI or EU's Euro-Asia connectivity portal. So if we all think about global infrastructure, and maybe we have something big to work on in the future to glue every countries onto the new global system. Even we can upgrade AIB to GIB probably with U.S. participation, a global infrastructure investment bank. And I think that is something we need to really work into the common objective. So on the things that we can work together, maybe Susan, what's your take in this respect?
Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, I think that would be a very logical place for us to pool our efforts. And in fact, we've had these kinds of joint projects in the past. I remember Smart Cities was an area where the US and China worked very closely together, and we had local officials from states and provinces in China together trying to learn from each other about how to use technology to better manage and serve populations in cities. And I think that could be continue to be very important. Energy, technology cooperation and deployment has been a huge area of joint cooperation between the US and China in the past. We've unfortunately come to this kind of competition over infrastructure and who's going to get influence in another country by building a project. I don't think that it should be that kind of a competition. I know under the Obama administration, there was an effort to sort of work, in Africa together. China had a lot of projects in Africa, and we were doing a lot of power projects in Africa. We were trying to figure out how to make them work together. I mean, I do think it is hard for us to work together because we have a different way of doing things, certainly in infrastructure projects. There are cultural and other, just sort of commercial differences. But I think, these are areas that are in sort of, it's not as clear-cut a case as a pandemic, which is a public health emergency, but it should be pretty easy and apolitical to work on sort of development projects in third countries, in my opinion. If you can figure out how the comparative advantages line up, then you can do it. But we need the political will, which isn't there right now.
The U.S. has been running World Bank for many years now. China has AIB. I mean, all those development banks probably can work together. Actually, John Thornton just said in our webinar that at one time, actually, China and U.S. were talking about collaborating on BI, and John Kerry told me at the Munich Security Conference last year as same thing. So there's a possibility, if we can work on climate, and also China already quite advanced on that. In terms of clean vehicles and the solar energy and the wind power and things like that, we could work with U.S. on infrastructure. President Xi just had a video conference with President Macron and Angela Merkel talking about working in Africa. We should get U.S. working on that together. So we have something common to work together rather than with dividing us.
One of the things I worry about is that the focus on COVID-19 is now taking it's taking up a lot of oxygen that should be being devoted to climate change. And that could be the next tragedy of the commons that we all face. We can't it's very hard to do two big things like that at once. So this is why I say co-evolution is the only way, and with the pandemic, even more so now.
We had a very, very good discussion so far. I think that the US and China should really work in, but one of the urgent things about pandemic is about this virus vaccine recognition, because we had people cannot travel because of different countries didn't recognize vaccine. You know, the mobility of the issue of the if we're going to coexist with virus for a long time to come, how we can really start this reboot the international travel, but at the same time maintain the content in the virus. Student cannot come, even like a Schwarzman College for the whole year. The student can come to China, not studying, graduated already, not attending one day at the campus. Chinese student can't go to the United States and things like that. Recognize the vaccine of those countries that are recognized by WHO, and so those are really great. Actually, my staff was telling me we had about almost 400,000 people viewing us online, but we have received a few questions from online media as well. So I just pass those questions, and we have a final round, and maybe also have some concluding remarks as well. I have a question from China Daily, which asks that the U.S. administration made the rounds of pushing lab leaking hypotheses while turning deaf to the Fort Detroit probe requests. So what's your view on that? There was another news from Guancha News. The United States used its economic and financial power to dominate the global economic order and used the sanctions against many countries and enterprises. At present, the United States still imposing sanctions on some officials in Iran, Huawei, and even Hong Kong, China. Many enterprises have to comply with the US decrees of cutting off exchanges with relevant entities. However, since last year, China taking a series of countermeasures and formulated laws and regulations, such as anti-foreign sanction law of the People's Republic of China, measures for blocking improper extraterritorial application of foreign laws and measures, provision on a list of unreliable entities. So today, there may be direct conflicts between the laws and regulations of China and those of the United States in some field, and it seems to be very difficult to abide by the laws of both sides at the same time. What should enterprises do? Can WTO and other multilateral mechanisms play a role in such situation? There's another question from Beijing News. The eve of China's Lunar New Year, President Xi Jinping had a full conversation with the US President Biden. Then the US-China held high levels in Alaska and recently in Tianjin. How would you comment on the exchanges between China and the United States? And what are the prospects for cooperation between China and the United States? We love to hear your feedback, but also your final conclusion and remarks for our webinar, which this is our second special feature webinar of the 7th Center for China and Globalization Forum.
And I think that I've been pretty clear and pretty strong in my clarion call for better cooperation between the US and China to face the ongoing pandemic and mitigate the damage in our own countries, but also to help other governments really face up to the problems that they have and get vaccines out throughout the world. I mean, nobody's going to be safe in either one of our countries until not just our people get vaccinated, but everybody gets vaccinated. And we can't keep our countries shut down. As Henry, you were just saying, we have to restore mobility. So in order to do that, we've got to get everyone vaccinated. And we'll probably need booster shots every year. So there's going to be a lot of vaccine production, and we should be focused on cooperating how to get that done. On the question about what should enterprises do, I mean, this gets to the issue of how we need rules in the international system to govern this commercial space that is come about under globalization and is a fantastic thing for promoting global prosperity. We need to repair the WTO. We need to get together and agree on rules of how our systems are going to fit together, which countries' courts should be able to decide disputes, or how dispute resolution is going to work in all these cases. We can't keep having these anti-suit injunctions, and then you have an anti-suit injunction and competing court processes. I mean, this is not the way we should be moving. And I think it is really difficult for companies right now. It's going to continue to be difficult until we can get some repair work done on this relationship. The last thing on the exchanges at the official level between the US and China, we've talked a little bit about that. What I want to say is that, the relations between our governments are not always going to be very good. And in recent years, of course, they've not been good at all. But it doesn't mean that the relationship on the non-governmental level has to be hostage to that official relationship. There's a lot that goes on day to day between the United States and China, in business, in culture, in academics and education, in exchanges, and all kinds of other areas that need to continue, that need to be expanded. And I really hope, Henry, that your Globalization Center can have some kind of a youth summit so we can get younger voices in on this conversation, because those are the people that are going to be affected by this relationship that Ronnie predicts is going to be bad for the next 10 years. I mean, this is the lives of young people in both our countries. It's a significant portion of the global population, and they should be in on the conversation to try to, understand what's happening, and so that we can hear their voices on how they think about it too.
I'm with you, Susan, that we have to have a rule-based society. But when you have one country who is so big that it can write its own laws, such as I sanction you, is that rule-based? I don't know. I'm really worried about this thing, about the sanctioning of businesses and this and that, and the counter sanctioning, as you rightly pointed out. And so let's have a rule-based society, the only way to go. Not when one country is so big that it can totally, frankly, reject the rules and yet still give the perception that I am the rule, I am righteousness. You guys break the law, I don't, but the reality is, check history. America probably broke more law or international rules than any other country. It comes back to a very fundamental point, I'll end there. And that is, the world for the last 200 years has seen Asia waning, and it has seen the West rising. That after World War II, the United States became the undisputed leader of the world, and it's done a lot of good. But on the other hand, although it has done a lot of good, if one is not self-enlightened and to not keep our own superiority complex, that a big country like China cannot economically rise. And if it rises, it would disrupt the international system. That your interest in the international system, that you led the world to form for good in the past. But the world has changed. You cannot deny the fact that 1.4 billion people has gone, from a 1,000 per capita US dollar per capita income to now a 10,000. And so the world has changed. And so the West has to gradually adjust to a world which is a fairer world, a world where there are other people, sorry to bring this word in, who is of the different race that is rising. And Japan rising was a shock to America 40, 50 years ago, but they were small. There was only 120 million people, less than that in those days. But China 10 times bigger in size and more. And so I think the West to adjust intellectually, culturally, mentally to a different world. If not, then I do worry that I think 10 years is a little bit too short to expect any positive change.
Thank you. I think, we had a very fruitful and stimulating and productive dialogue. That's exactly CCG would like to do, is to promote the dialogues and understanding, and also to really explain the points on both sides. And I think this is really also the meaning of our annual conference as well. We had so many lively discussions on that as well. So point is really well taken, that I think China and the US, in the 21st century, situation has been changed. The diameter has been changed, that we have to work together, for the sake of the humanity. And also, US being the largest economy, China being the second largest, We have the moral responsibility to support, not just between China and the US, the 7.5 billion people. In that respect, we need really intensify our communication, our dialogue, and high-level visit, student exchanges, tourism, and also culture and media, and resume our consulate.